Oh, it's a huge challenge for me too, and not to get not to get too pretty with things. I mean, there's a reason why we paint, rather than I love digital art, I love photography, but I love those. I love in the song where you can hear the musician make a little mistake, and they capture it on record. I mean, I love those elements of humanity, um, and I want to bring those to my work,
Yeah.
but I also want to get it right. So that's the dance.
We are live with the great Gavin Glakas. Gavin, you got to show us what you're going to do today.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
I'm great, man.
Good. I'm glad. Well, today I'm going to take a color study that I did from life, and I'm going to bring it into the studio, and I'm going to put some details in based on the information that I got from life.
Outstanding. Okay, well, let's get right into it, and
Great.
Go ahead and get your camera set, and we'll do this.
Okay.
Today is day number 338, and it's my very last day. I'm so sorry, but you got a really great artist for the very last day. And when I say it's my very last day, let's hope it's not my last day on earth. But what I mean by that is I'm going to take a vacation. I've been doing this for 338 days, and I'm exhausted. So I started noticing I was getting grumpy. I know that's hard to believe, but anyway, I'm gonna leave here for a week, maybe longer, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, maybe 10 months. I don't know. And as soon as I feel like coming back, I'll be back. And then we're going to have replays, the best of, going on throughout the week at noon. And of course, we will continue our 3 p.m. broadcast every day, 7 days a week. So Gavin, let's get to it.
Okay. So I went down to Georgetown in Washington, D.C. the other day. This is a little more ambitious than most of the color studies that I do. I do a lot of color studies from life, and then I'll bring them into the studio, and I'll paint studio landscapes. But I'll try to just bring as much information from life, not just color studies, but sketches. I'll try to work out the perspective, the depth, and but I love the creativity and the freedom of the studio. So.
Would you like me to show your images where you started creating this?
I think that might help.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the reference image. This is from where you stood. And then here is an image of you've kind of laid it in with looks like a transparent red oxide. And then kind of got it to the point it is now.
That's right. I spent some time on the proportions. It's a little complicated with all of this architecture and the perspective. And then I just let her rip with the color and tried to really get a sense of all of the colors that were going to be present in the scene, not just in the house, but the sky, and also the ground, some of those colors that are a little tough to find from photos. So
I want to point something out I want to point something out real quickly. I'm going to pull this photo back out. Now, look at the photo on the left, the one with the bicycle in it. And look at the light on the building. Now, this is probably 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes later. Look at how much the light has changed. And so Gavin had to capture the light that he wants to portray. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this develops. Okay. Now, if you'll walk us through what you're doing, that'll be helpful. We have a lot of people watching who are not not up to speed on some of the latest things, or may not have ever painted before.
Well, I'm taking this very general sort of approximation that I started with. I used the sketch to help me figure out proportions and also composition. I try to compartmentalize my problems. After working that out, I tried to just really discover the color that I was looking at. And I love kind of just experimenting with color. If something looks a little bit orange, maybe it's going a little bit yellow. Maybe it's going a little bit red. How red is it going? Well, perhaps it's going so red as it's getting purple, or perhaps it's going so yellow that it's getting green. So the beginning of my paintings, the beginning of my color studies are usually just an exploration into color and just sort of an examination of not necessarily what's there, but more importantly, kind of what I can get away with. So I find that just endlessly exciting. It's just kind of playing with color and pushing it. And when I'm doing color studies, a lot of times they're a lot quicker than this, 20 minutes when the sun is setting, that type of thing. It's kind of like I'm trying to get as much information as I possibly can before I have to leave. And I do them with commissioned portraits too. If the person's really busy and they don't have time to sit for me, I'll see if they can give me, and nobody does. Nobody has time to sit for me. So I'll see if I can get an hour with them.
Let me show real quickly, Gavin, let me show real quickly some portraits that you've done so people get an understanding of that. First off, looks like Harry Reid.
That's right. That's his Senate Majority Leader portrait.
And you said that's hanging in the Capitol?
That's right.
All right. And then this is?
That's Stephen Ayers, who was the 11th architect of the Capitol. He just retired recently.
No, that's fabulous. I'll go ahead and show a couple of your other paintings too real quickly so people can see some of your developed work. Absolutely fantastic.
Thank you. That really means a lot.
Well, you're really an accomplished artist. Really
Thank you very much, Eric.
You're very good with drama and light.
I love that. I grew up on the illustrators. I grew up on, my dad used to read the Iliad to us when we were kids, my brother and me. I love that. And those are effects that I'm so fascinated with. And I'm so fascinated with just trying to explore those and push them as far as possible. So I really appreciate that.
Now, you might, while you're dealing with that, that's a tough subject to create something that first off, you've got perspective. You also have roundness, and you have to create that sense of roundness. Can you address that while you're going through this?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I find the most difficult is just really drawing. I mean, it's a drawing problem, not a painting problem, but just going after anything round, anything symmetrical, and doing it in a way that doesn't feel stilted or too stiff. So it always helps me to just put a line straight down the middle. Now this tower's for me a little more complicated because it doesn't actually curve all the way around on the right side. It kind of stops 9/10 of the way around and hits this flat plane here. But it helps to figure out where the middle is, whether you're drawing a glass of orange juice or a tower. And then try to find an area that's equidistant while working out those ellipses. So that's not something that I really enjoy, but for some reason I feel compelled to do it.
Where's your horizon line? So just so people understand perspective, where would your horizon line be?
It's about here. It's a little difficult because let me just pull back a little.
Oh, I can't. Yeah, we couldn't see all that. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a hill. So this is a hill. And then this is a steeper hill. The horizon line is, I usually put it in. I didn't even put it in on this one because it's below here. I want to say that it's about here.
So everything above the horizon line is pointing down. Everything below the horizon line is pointing up.
Yeah, and it's a little complicated because some of these areas that we, didn't think about as being below our eye level, like the bottoms of tires, are really above us. So, it took a little engineering, but I like that. I mean, I like going out and sketching.
Like the challenge. Okay, zoom it in really close like you had it before. And good.
Yeah,
good.
I love these details. It's for me, it's a big part of the subtleties of those little areas really help tell the story. So that's kind of what I'm excited to get into today.
Outstanding. Well, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
I will tell everybody real quickly so I don't interrupt you later that we have prizes today. The winner of the plein air apron is Jan Hansen from Washington State. And today we're giving away a copy of, not a copy, but a full year's subscription to Fine Art Connoisseur magazine, the digital edition. And to win that, just leave a comment and then we'll pick from the comments even after the replays. All right, you're back.
Great. And part of this, when it comes to the details, is how much do I want? How far Do I want to push those details? How much is going to help the cause? When does it start hurting the cause? All those types of decisions. As we all know, at a certain point, too much detail really just crushes the spirit of something. So everything, color, value, everything, it's just a question of, is this going to help the cause?
People are going to ask me what kind of brush you're using, what's the surface you're painting on, and what did you tone your canvas with?
I love these brushes. These are by Jack Richardson and Company. They're called gray matter brushes, and they're basically razor sharp. I can create really sharp edges in here. I also use them for areas like foliage and places where I do want some scrappiness, but for me, it helps a lot to paint with angles. This kind of prevents me from getting into amorphous curves, but rather, to keep making decisions by using angles. So I love these brushes. And
the other thing I like about them is that I think they were the first to come out with a painted ferrule so that it doesn't reflect in your eyes.
Right. It's so helpful when you're outside painting in the sun.
I even find it in the studio. The other night I was painting in the studio. My lights are right ahead of me, and I got this big blinding reflection off the ferrule of my brush.
Right. Yeah, we just moved. I just put these lights in, and I'm still getting to know my way around my studio. So yeah, it's a great effect. If anybody who's ever worn a white T-shirt out in the sun while painting a landscape knows how frustrating that can be. Yeah.
I try to wear a gray muted color of some kind. If I wear red, it's going to reflect into my painting. Or
right.
If somebody wear white, it's going to reflect into my painting.
Right. I still forget sometimes. Something will happen. I'll run out the door with my paints, and then there I am in a white shirt. And I can't see anything.
Well, just coat it with paint.
Exactly. Hardly have anything that's not coated with paint.
Sounds familiar. We had a cocktail party last night. We had several hundred people on. We were just kind of talking about art. We had a lot of fun.
That looked like a lot of fun. I really wanted to join, but I'm trying to finish something up right now. So
yeah, we all have excuses.
So I do a lot of almost everything I do is an experiment. Rarely will I put down a stroke knowing full well that it's going to work out. So on this one that I just put down, it's just too dark. It needs to be lighter. I wish I were the kind of artist who could just kind of have a game plan, stick to it, and get on with my life. But I'm constantly pushing color. I'm constantly pushing, with color, I push it around the color wheel. I push the saturation. I push the value. It's sort of like, what can I get away with? And this one right here just got a little too dark. So I'm just trying to fix it. It's amazing to me. I have a hard time getting shadows light enough when I'm painting sunlight. They're never, doesn't matter how light I make them, it almost seems, they're never light enough.
Well, especially when you lay in the lights, it really amplifies the darks.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. Do you try to keep your shadows transparent? Is that important to you at all?
Often I do. Sometimes when I'm out there just going for it, kind of opacity just sort of happens like here. So we'll see. I might actually remove some of this paint just so there's less of it. I might just stick with it. I'm not sure. Oh, and you had asked about the surface. This is a hardboard panel. It's a masonite panel. I put 3 coats of gesso on it. I put them on the back too. I love painting on panel because you can make it any size you want. And I'll probably wind up lopping the left inch and the right inch off of this painting. I like that effect, or that the ability to do that.
You have to, for people painting on masonite, you have to be really careful because masonite absorbs moisture. And so if you're going to leave any of it exposed, then you need to varnish it, or you need to do what he just suggested, and that is to gesso the whole thing. Otherwise, the moisture will get in, and over long periods of time, it'll crumble.
Right. Yeah. So I gesso the sides, and I take pains to make sure that doesn't happen. do a lot of finger painting and palette knife painting.
Yeah, that's why I wear gloves. I need to use my fingers, but I don't want that stuff going in my liver.
I usually do, but they don't look great on camera, so I'm not wearing them today.
You're so vain.
I mean, I spend most of my life covered in paint, so I allow myself a little bit of that.
That's okay. We'll let it go today. A lot of very positive comments.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
The virtual throwing of tomatoes is something that I was hoping to avoid.
Yeah, nobody's allowed to throw tomatoes here. We immediately execute them.
It is amazing what a positive community you have created, and sort of the social media, which I got into 100% because you gave a speech in San Antonio about 12 years ago and basically said, all of you introverts need to get on this because you need it for your careers. And I just switched my thinking right after that and embraced it. But it's amazing how positive everybody is. I hear so many people who are not artists complaining about the negativity. And I just think to myself, it's great that there's this sense that we're all kind of in this together.
Well, that's why I did it. Is I noticed that my team members, my wife, my kids, everybody was starting to go negative. And I just thought, and my friends, and so I thought, if I can just do something to keep people occupied and upbeat a little bit, get our community together, and I thought this was going to last 2 weeks. I think we all did,
right?
And here we are, 338 days into it. That's why I need a vacation. Hey, I see somebody from Bee Cave, Texas. I'm in Bee Cave, Texas. How exciting! I'm actually, it's right outside of Austin. So you were at the San Antonio, that would have been the gallery, the Greenhouse Gallery talk.
That's right. I was with Greenhouse for a few years, and I loved it.
I miss them.
I do too. They were great guys. There were so many great artists in there.
Yeah.
And it was a speech that really changed the way I looked at everything. I'd always sort of, looked down. I mean, this is 2009 maybe. But I'd always I didn't want any part of social media. And you just said, hey, look, you guys need to get over it. I think you might have used those words. And you said, this is free advertising. You need to embrace this. And I really changed the way I looked at everything.
Well, I'm glad to have helped. If you want to send a commission check, I'd be happy to take it.
Absolutely. It's in the mail. Just look for it.
The three great lies. We won't talk about the other two. Funny.
So normally, I don't really have a normally for the way that I work. Sometimes I'll block in the whole thing. Sometimes I'll kind of start in the most important area. Occasionally I'll work from back to front, which is something that I encourage my students to do. But the going out and getting information from life, I really think is important. And if I can paint the whole painting from life, I'll do it. In fact, this one, I'll probably just go back because I can paint this from life. I'm not allowed to be out of the house from 7 to 8 p.m. But I can paint this in the late afternoon. So I might just go finish this from life. But if not, it's really helpful to just get these colors down because the colors don't look anything like the photo. And neither does the depth or the overall feel of the scene. So I encourage my cityscape students, a lot of them will have a photo they took in Italy, and you can't get back to Italy right now you're not going to go over there for a 20-minute color study. But if you're looking west, when the sun is setting in Italy, well, some of those colors might be the same as when you're looking west and the sun is setting in Texas or in Virginia. Yeah. So yep. I think it's really important to keep learning while painting, never to sort of get into that thing where you're not learning anything from the painting you're doing.
Now you're painting in oils, I assume.
That's right.
Yeah. Somebody asked in the questions. If you guys have questions, I'll pass them along. Vicky asked, where are you painting from?
I'm painting from McLean, Virginia, which is right outside of Washington, D.C. This is an area of D.C. called Georgetown, and it's a place I've spent a ton of time as a kid, as an adult, and it's an area of town that I really have a connection to. And so I've had my eye on this house for years, and this was a great opportunity to do it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank
You
you.
know, architecture is a tough subject.
It really is. I don't want to have an architect look at this and go, that wouldn't go like that. That thing wouldn't be there. It would be over there. So, but I love using it to sort of, I love history, and I love the notion that we're kind of living in the society that our forebears built, and living our very modern lives on top of these ancient foundations. So I'm really fascinated by depictions of architecture.
The reason I think it's hard is not just the perspective part, but you know, you if you do everything that has perfect edges, like you feel like you see, it just falls apart. You know, you have to find ways to break up lines and to keep it interesting, and yet make it read like what you want it to read. So that's a challenge for me.
Oh, it's a huge challenge for me too, and not to get too pretty with things. I mean, there's a reason why we paint, you know, rather than, I love digital art, I love photography, but I love those, you know, I love in the song where you can hear the musician make a little mistake and they capture it on record. I mean, I love those elements of humanity. And I want to bring those to my work, but I also want to get it right. So that's the dance.
Somebody asked if you've ever painted a whole painting with a palette knife.
I mean, maybe I have. I mean, maybe there have been, you know, a little bit of brushwork here and there, but I have painted entire paintings with palette knives, and it's great. I love it. I love the palette knife.
All right. So we have a lot of people who I'm recognizing might be new. I'm seeing names that I've not seen before. So if you're new, please go into the comments and say you're new. If you're watching and you're not in the comments, take a minute and say so. And if you're international, anywhere outside of America, please say where you're from. Although everybody should say where they're from. It's nice to see where you're coming in from. And remember, we have a prize, a digital subscription to Fine Art Connoisseur magazine, and you will love that magazine. Been doing that for like 14 years.
Such a great magazine.
Joanne says, wow, I thought I recognized those buildings. Very familiar with Georgetown. I'm a native Washingtonian.
Excellent.
Right.
31st and Q, Joanne.
How do you cut your masonite is one of the questions.
I cut it with a handsaw. I mean, I cut it in the most old school possible way. And then I sand down the edges, and they usually go in frames anyway. So that's how I do it.
Okay. Sand them down and then seal them.
Right.
I had one summer, I had my studio used to be out on a enclosed porch in the Adirondacks. I've since moved, but we had a patch of about 3 weeks of rain. And I didn't go down to my studio and work much during that time for whatever reason. It probably was cold. And I went down there and all my panels were warped. I mean, seriously warped, like a half circle warped. And I didn't have any masonite, but the birch panels had all curved. And so at that point, I stopped using that particular brand, but I also started trying to seal things, because if they'd been sealed, they wouldn't have absorbed the moisture in the air.
Right.
Now, will you eventually try to create the essence of bricks? I mean, would you actually put brick lines in there, or will you just want the mind to fill in the blanks?
Now, I can't really see the bricks in these areas. In these areas, I can a little bit. So I'm gonna the way that I kind of push things is gently. You know, you tip your foot, your toe in the pool, and then your ankle, and then your knee. So probably create a sense of texture in these bricks along the transitions where, we see that the most.
Okay.
And if that works, maybe I'll expand it across, and at a certain point I'll go too far, and that's when I'll probably stop.
Gerda in Netherlands would like to know the color of the roof.
It's kind of a cross between gold and green. It's the local color of it seems to be a very, 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 very light gray, a very warm gray.
But what did you use to paint it?
Oh, okay. So my palette is the cadmium colors, alizarin crimson, permanent rose, cadmium red light, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow light, chromium oxide green, phthalo green. So it's a combination of those colors, and a little back and forth, basically between gold and between green. And that actually reminds me, this highlight's showing up a little more sort of sharply than it probably looks in real life. But I'm going to put a kind of pinkish over there
because of the camera. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a little. It's looking a little bit too orange to me, so I'm going to throw a little bit of red on top. And that's something that I do a lot, is just, if a color veers too orange, I'll bring it back with some red. If a color, if a blue is getting too green, I'll throw a purple in there, rather than obscuring it altogether. So let's try this out. Nope, too dark.
Too dark.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's at least you didn't cover the whole thing. That's why you want to put test spots down.
Yeah. And I don't want to completely obscure that gold. I want them to kind of play together. And that's too light. Goodness gracious. And it's also too pink. So I'll sneak it back to orange, towards orange, and make it a little bit darker. And those are the decisions that, we're just always making with color. Hue, saturation, and value. And we're constantly just shifting those levers and seeing what works and what doesn't. There we go. That's the color that I want. And now that's, the pink is sort of completely taken over that. So I'm going to put some of that gold back up there on top. And that's something that I do a lot, is just, yeah, there we go. All right. It's getting a little monolithic.
Well, you got a big international audience. I'm not reading the names anymore because I've offended some people by doing that, but they don't want me interrupting. But I am putting them on the screen from time to time.
Oh, I'm so glad. Well, hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
You're internationally famous. You're pulling them in from everywhere.
Love it. Well, thanks, Eric. This is really fun, and I can't tell you how much I've been looking forward to this, and how much I'm enjoying it. So it's great to see everybody, so to speak.
Yeah, you're doing a great job. You're knocking it out of the park.
Thank you. That really means a lot. I used to paint from back to front because when I never painted really a landscape before I was about 30. I always wanted to be Frederick Church. So I'd go out and I'd come in with, 19 finished leaves and a whole bunch of white area. But when I started painting landscapes, I figured I would paint from back to front because it looked to me like that's what he did. And after a while, it occurred to me that was kind of forcing me to give everything the same amount of attention, to make, in a sense, put the same amount of detail into the background as the foreground, and into the less important areas as the most important areas. So then I shifted my thinking, and I don't paint this way formulaically, but I'll often paint from most important to least important in one way or another. So in a sense, that's kind of what I'm doing here.
Well, and you think about it, if you do that, you captured the light before the light changed.
Yeah.
And so that it's that turret that probably got you excited about that building.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of like that too. I've been told by some artists that's what they do, is they try to get the thing in that they're most interested about, because after you get fatigued after an hour or two, you start making mistakes. And the reality is that everything else kind of becomes secondary or tertiary anyway.
Yeah. And actually, that's something a lot of people ask me questions about. How do you paint landscapes when the sun's always moving and the shadows are always moving? And I encourage them to think of that as the best part about painting landscapes, because you get to cherry pick. You go, oh, hey, that turret just came into sunlight. I'll keep that. And, oh, well, that's turning into shadow. I don't really like that so much, but maybe it'll be sunlight later. And then, gosh, this is a mess down here. Oh, look, now that just turned into shadow. Okay, I'll take that. And to look at it as an opportunity, just kind of take what you want and you know, kind of leave the rest alone.
One thing I like to do, I don't do it as often as I should, but I like to keep a couple of, you know, like a secondary canvas with a couple of small areas, you know, blocked out, taped out. And if I see something that changes, even though I don't necessarily want to mess with the composition I've got, I want to capture it, I'll do a quick sketch, oil sketch in a, you know, in a little thumbnail that's, you know, the size of a credit card. And that way I can use that later if I'm doing a studio piece or want to change something up.
Yeah, that's a really nice approach. And you wind up with all of these kind of notes in your studio, like, oh, okay, that's, you know, that's cool backlighting on these trees. I'll need that one day. You know, I'll take that.
Someone is asking what kind of brand of paint you're using.
I'm using Jack Richardson paints. They make great paints.
They do make great paints, and they're really cheap.
Yeah, they do a great job, and their brushes are great, and their paints are great, and that's what I'm using.
You know, he had he had tubes of paint at the plein air convention. All the vendors always bring in great stuff and great discounts, and he was selling tubes of paint for $5, I think. And
yeah, it's really amazing. They actually make the local art supply store here is Plaza. They actually make the Plaza brand paint. So they're Richardson paints, but they've got the Plaza label on them, and as such, they're less expensive. They're great paints.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of I don't know a lot, but there are some brands that are all made by one factory with the same process.
Yeah, that's something that that I still have a lot to learn about, but it's
We all
fun.
have a lot to learn. If you guys are enjoying this, please make sure you share it so others can enjoy it, and maybe hit a like or a thumbs up button. Nothing helps more than to have you share it, and if you're in another country as well, because if you're an artist like Shubaha in India, if she's an artist and she knows lots of other artists on her social media, they're going to find this, and then they'll get the pleasure of tuning in every day. Thank you for watching.
Yeah, thank you for watching. Let me just show you kind of how I go about things. So this neutral in there, I wasn't really sure. Put this down. This is about the color of the road. It's too dark and it's too green. Now I do a lot of removing paint. I leave a trail of Q-tips everywhere I go. Q-tips are great for removing, but I really enjoy just going, okay, if that's too dark and too green, I'm going to make it lighter and redder, and we'll see how that goes. So I'll just take I'm going to go aggressive. I encourage people to be aggressive with color in the beginning. You can always make it duller. You know, if you go too saturated, you can always make it duller. If you go too dull in the beginning, it's tough to paint into that and get it really vibrant. So I'll just throw a permanent rose in here. Now, I find this very, very important. I'm going to keep my eye on this. I'm going to put this in with my peripheral vision, and I'm going to take note of whether it makes my painting better or worse. One of two things is going to happen. My painting's either going to get better or it's going to get worse when I put this aggressive hot pink in here. So eyes focused on this. Let's see here. I can live with that. I can live with that for now. A lot of times it's a disaster, but I can live with that for now.
So I guess that means better. I
think so. I'm assuming you'll tell me if I'm wrong.
Oh yeah, you can be assured of that. I'm not. I'm some expert. I'm not. Okay, question. Has anyone ever visited the Torpedo Factory in Old Alexandria in Northern Virginia? 3-story building of art studios and galleries on the water. Amazing.
Oh yeah, it's a great spot. It's one of the top tourist destinations in DC. I mean, it's up there with the Air and Space Museum and the National Gallery.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I'm coming.
It's got 300 artist studios. It's a great place. They teach classes there. It's a great place.
All right, maybe I'll come.
Oh, now you'll come.
Well, I always need an excuse. Torpedo Factory. Cool.
Yeah, it was a torpedo factory in World War II. It's a neat place.
Well, was it really?
Yeah.
So when we went to, I took a group to Cuba 2 different times. There's a giant metal building on the water, and it must have 1,000 artist stalls in it. And
wow.
It's absolutely amazing. I mean, everything you can think of, from people who hand make things to things made in China. Some of it's kind of garbagey, but some really, really phenomenal art. And they have a hard time getting art supplies there. So I don't know how they pull it off.
Oh, wow.
But I saw some artists there. I bought some art there that was every bit as good as anything I've ever seen.
It must be fascinating with the culture they have there and the politics to see what those Cuban artists are making.
Well, they have nothing. I mean, they just really do without. Okay, people are asking me to have you produce a video with us.
Oh my gosh, I would love to.
All right, done. Next.
Whoever asked that question, thank you very much. Shoot me your address and I'll send you a thank you.
When we see somebody great like you, we like to amplify that.
Well, that means a great deal to me coming from you. So thank you for saying that.
You do a lot of teaching locally, or did you?
I do. I've always taught portrait and figure at a great art center called the Yellow Barn. And since I love teaching portrait and figure, that's the way that I became an artist, is that I didn't go to art school. I took classes for years with Robert Liberace and Danny Dawson.
Yeah.
And it was such a great experience that I've tried to bring my own sensibilities to teaching. So I teach portrait and figure. And then since COVID started, I've started teaching cityscape painting. I never could figure out how I was going to make it work logistically. I mean, you just can't deal with rainstorms and parking and bathrooms and people getting lost in that type of thing. Downtown in DC, which is where I wanted to do it. Doing it in COVID, I mean, through Zoom, and I'm really enjoying it. I mean, I can show Frederick Church's work and Monet and Hopper, and I can draw in Photoshop. It's really fun.
Well, Robert Liberace was at our FACE convention, the Figurative Art Convention and Expo. And the next one is due to be in your area, your zone in Williamsburg in November.
Williamsburg is great.
Yeah. And we have some of the top artists in the world coming in to teach. We don't know if we're going to be able to hold it, though. We hope so by November. We also had a conference online, which we'll do again, which is called Realism Live, which focuses on academic realism and impressionistic realism and everything in between. And we, of course, have Plein Air Live coming up. As a matter of fact, this Sunday is the last chance to register and get the best price. And then we had Watercolor Live about 4 weeks ago. And so we're doing a lot of virtual teaching, 3-4 day conferences with 30 or 40 of top artists, and we're having a ball doing it. And we may have something else up our sleeve that we haven't announced yet. We might. Just saying, we might.
Well, I'm excited to hear it.
Might have had a logo approved for it today, so we may be getting close. Wonder what it is. Maybe people will guess what it is in the comments. That's it. You know, you've got a lot of beautiful subjects to paint around that area, especially when it comes to architecture.
I love it. I love historical, cities with a historical feel. Even just these buildings. My grandfather grew up in D.C. He used to sell vegetables off a horse-drawn cart before high school back in the 20s. And just looking at these buildings and thinking that he ran by them with his brothers. He was definitely in this spot. His cousins lived down the street. It's just fascinating for me. It's a fascinating kind of exploration of humanity.
When I love to photograph and paint old buildings that are crumbling, and it's just, I find it's fascinating, and I always tell myself when I see them, even when I'm driving by them, I tell myself, this was somebody's dream. They may have saved their money their whole life to be able to build this. They may have gone to great trouble to build this, and here it is 50 years, 100 years, 200 years later, and it's crumbling, but it was once a dream. That'd be a great name for a painting. Crumbling. That'd be a good name for a show. Crumbling Dreams.
That certainly is.
Ooh, I like that. That's really catching the light.
Yeah, I do a lot of putting down a color and then deliberately, covering up 95% of it with another color. In this case, this just really warm orange is going to make the yellow that I put over top of it, hopefully, in theory, just really glow. So
yeah, you're going to catch
after that build up, we'll see.
That reflected light. I often tell a story about I came out of the broadcast industry, and I was in Boston. We were walking down the street, and it was afternoon sun like that, and the light was splashing the red brick building just like that, and the sky was glowing in pink. And I was with these broadcasters, and I said, "Look over there! Look at that light! Look at how it's hitting the building." And they looked at me like I was Charles Manson or something, like a tinfoil hat. It was just they said, we don't see it. What do you see? So that's the value of becoming an artist, is it really opens your eyes.
It's really true. I often need to remind myself when I'm talking to people to be paying attention to what they're saying and not looking at the light on their, on their face or the backlighting on their shoulder or whatever the situation may be. I would imagine some of our viewers have that same predicament. So it's fun to really lay this color on thick in these very vibrant areas.
Well, do you want to talk about the importance of thickness for catching light?
Yeah, it's just, for me, it's really giving something emphasis, really building up the paint. I mean, not only giving it kind of a sculptural quality so it jumps out at you, it catches the light in the room more. And it's very noticeable, but also in terms of saturation and kind of luminosity. All of this paint is to a certain degree translucent. And so if you can really, I'll lay on a really warm, very saturated color underneath, and then put a lighter, by definition, less saturated color on top, rather than just putting that second color down on top of a gray canvas or down on a white canvas. And it really makes the color sing. I mean, that kind of relief sculptural quality to paint is something I love, and something that, again, I'm certainly not ever disparaging other forms of art. I love digital art. I love photography. I love film. I love everything. But there's something about the sculptural quality of paint that I think is just, gives us such a great tool.
I love all forms of art, some better than others, but I get excited about some things that I don't think I would. Once in a while I'll see a completely wild piece that just blows me out of the water, that is not anything I would think that I would love, but I respond emotionally to it.
Isn't that a great feeling? If you're I'm not somebody who spends a ton of time paying attention to, what we consider to be abstract art. But when I see something that really grabs me, or makes me question and go, how in the world did this person do this? It's such a great feeling.
What are you painting with? It looks like you have two brushes taped together.
Yeah, I have a really small brush, which has the perfect point. I think it's I want to say it's a size 1 Gray Matters brush, but it's too short. I like a long brush. So I duct taped it to this other brush that has, it's seen its day in the sun. And now it's nice and long.
All right.
Yeah, I'd be lost without duct tape. Duct tape and Q-tips.
We literally needed duct tape this week. We had a plumber here, and he went up to fix our plumbing, and he stepped on our ducts and destroyed our ducts, and we had to have somebody come in. Lori and I are up there trying to keep the heat coming in the house. It's 7 degrees, and we got the duct tape out, and we duct taped it on the ducts. First time I've ever done that.
It comes in handy. That's right. How is everything down there? My brother lives in Austin. And,
he does. Well, you'll have.
Yeah, I love it there. I love Austin. You guys doing well?
We'll have to go painting. Yeah, we're fine. We just have 3 or 4 rooms destroyed and water damage and pipe damage. And
oh no,
we had a horrible experience with Ben Franklin plumbers. I won't go into it, but I'm not going to recommend them again.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Promises made, and they called us today. We were scheduled for them to come out, waiting 5 days, and we had used them once before, and then they weren't coming. We called them today, and they said, "Oh, we decided not to come." We said, "Why?" And they said, "Well, because you complained about our prices before, so we're not going to come." So it's like, yeah, your prices were high. So, but to do that
is despicable, especially with what you're going through down there.
We had another plumber. He had to fix one little tiny pipe. It probably took 10 minutes, and he wanted $1,400 for it. I said, "You're price gouging me. I'm not paying it. And if you don't charge me a reasonable price, I'm going to report you." So he did.
Wow.
So there's a lot of that going on down here right now, which is a shame.
That is a shame. Okay, so I'd like to mention one thing that I'm doing right now. We've probably all had that situation where you're out painting, especially kind of in the beginning of our painting endeavors. I was really confounded by color. Monet would put all those crazy colors everywhere, and I couldn't figure out how he could figure it out. And I'd be sitting there trying to find those colors that my teachers were always yelling at me about. And I'd look up and I'd see, okay, that's red. So then I'd go to my palette and I'd mix a red, and then I'd look up and it would look blue. I go, oh, it just looked red. What happened? Now it's blue. Maybe it is. Maybe it's red and blue. Maybe it's a red brick. Maybe it's catching a last degree of sunlight. Maybe we're seeing a reflection of the blue sky. Maybe we're seeing a bit of a reflection of the blue shadow over here. So put up some red. This is how I go about it. And then maybe I'll put up some blue. This is a kind of grayish, purplish blue. Let's see what this looks like. And again, the way that I try to look at things, I try to make my decisions as binary as possible. This that I'm about to put up here is either going to make this painting better or worse. So let's figure it out. Again, eyes focused here. It's a little too dark. I might make it a little lighter and a little more crimsoning. I'll add white and a bit of permanent rose to this. We'll see how that turns out.
That's a great tip I've never heard before, is staring at the focal point and then asking if it makes it better or worse. Somebody ought to write that down.
I find it's very helpful. Sorry?
I'll put that in my book, my new book that I'm going to take from all these broadcasts. I'm going to take all the tips and put them in a book.
I love it. I find it's very helpful when drawing too. For instance, if you're drawing a portrait, when I say drawing, placing proportions. For a portrait, if this is the person's nose and you're putting in their mouth, I find if you can put in the corner of their mouth with your peripheral vision and keep your eyes focused on their nose, that can be really helpful. Oh, Eric, I ought to tell you that my friends Nancy and everyone at the Dreamline Artist Group on Facebook said to say hello today.
All right. Well, we connected to a lot of folks last night on the cocktail party. A lot of new people, a lot of people that are not members of the Dreamline Artist Group, but love the Dreamliners. You guys are rock stars. Oh, that was nice the way you just cut into that.
The chimney here?
Yeah, it's nice to see how other people do brush work. You know, that's really good.
Yeah, that's one of these things that's handy about this brush is that you can create these great sharp edges, but I'm using so much paint here. This is so thick, both the sky and the chimney, that hopefully it's not going to get too stiff and boring if the edges are all straight. But if it does get too stiff and boring, guess what? Now I got to fix that. I'm a big believer in kind of getting into trouble and forcing yourself to paint your way out of it. One of my teachers used to.
Well, and Richard Schmid would leave it like that. Leave a little of that edge out there.
Well, he's so great. I mean, I've learned so much from him. Now I'm all in my head about it, so we'll see what the original. We'll see what the finished version winds up looking like.
We're gonna end this in about 3 minutes. So if you want to kind of finish up on that chimney, and then we'll come back on camera and everybody get to see your face.
Sounds great.
Somebody's asking a question about what the Dreamliners is. It's a group of people. It essentially what it was is I started talking about ending the broadcast after a couple of weeks, and they thought they've been having fun getting together in the comments every day. So they started a group thinking I was going to stop this. And so anybody can be in the group. You just find Dreamline Artists on Facebook and apply to be a member.
A lot of talented artists on there and some really nice people as well.
Gavin's website is up on the screen. GavinGlakas.com, GLAKAS.com. What will they find there?
They'll find portraits. They'll find cityscapes. They'll find information on classes, links to galleries. And a couple of things about my story and how I got here. So
when you come to Austin to see your brother, you come over and I'll show you the portrait collection. I've got 26, 28, 30 portraits done by the greatest living artist of our time, of me, of course, and including some that are now deceased, 3 that are deceased. And it's pretty interesting to see. First off, my wife says, get them out of the house. So I put them in my office. But if somebody comes in for a job interview, it's like, sir, you've got a big ego. But it's nice to see how, first off, everybody interprets the same subject, and also to watch the aging sequence. It's kind of like the opposite of the portrait of Dorian Gray.
I love so many of those portraits. I've seen so many. And I think the first one I ever saw was Nelson Shanks's. And there's so many really excellent ones.
I spent 4 days with Nelson painting me.
Oh my gosh.
And 4 half days. And the stories, just unbelievable stories.
I'll bet.
Talking about, the things that Princess Diana told him in confidence, and, really cool. So she was dead at the time, so it was okay. But stories about painting Pavarotti and presidents, and it's really cool.
That must have been great. It is amazing that the relationship that develops between portrait artist and sitter.
Well, everyone's different, right? Some of them say, I don't want you to talk. Others say, please talk. Because that Nelson said that's part of the experience, is just getting to know people.
Yeah, I try to remind myself that I need my sitters to talk, because it's obviously easier if you're sitting there painting and nobody's talking. But to get to know them, to get some animation in their face, to develop a neat relationship, it's such an interesting dynamic.
I do the same. I try to, there are times when I'll say, okay, don't move your eyes, or can you stop talking for a few minutes? But yeah, I mean, I love doing that. Okay, we're going to put a cap on this. Why don't you come back on camera? Everybody give Gavin applause. It's fabulous. Really nice to watch that develop. And Gavin, his website is on the screen again. So that was terrific.
Thank
You're
you.
awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, you're a good teacher. You're a good painter, and you've got a lot of variety. The fact that you do landscapes and architecture and portraiture. We've had a really terrific time today. So thank you for doing this. I hope we'll put something together on a video. I
would love that. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you, Eric, and thank you everybody for tuning in.